Well, there it is. Notre Dame finally gets their signature bowl win over Georgia in the Sugar Bowl today, 23-10. I don't know about y'all, but I actually really enjoyed that game. You know why? Because it was a physical, knockdown, drag out kind of game. It wasn't sexy, it wasn't flashy, but it was a real test of fundamental football and mental fortitude. And as an old school football fan, that's something that I look forward to and cherish. And it's amazing to think that this is the same Notre Dame team that lost to Northern Illinois back in September. I remember being in Mayor's Garden with my parents that day in Dallas and watching that and just being in complete shock because the week before they had just beaten Texas A&M and Kyle Fields, and we thought they were laying down the foundation for a dominant season, in which they eventually would, but losing to Northern Illinois was a massive setback. And a lot of people didn't know if that was something that they'd be able to overcome. Well, they did. And the day after I processed what had happened after the Northern Illinois loss and then transitioned to the next day, I thought to myself, I was like, this stings in the moment. People are really going to scrutinize you because you're Notre Dame. Number one, so you have a magnifying glass on you. And then number two, you lost to Northern Illinois, which is embarrassing. It's a MAC team, which you were heavily favored over. I think they were, a 28 and a half points favorite in that game. So it was shocking that they lost. But I said, if you just drown out the noise for a few minutes and really focus on the path of the season, this is something that if Notre Dame compiles a couple wins together, they can pull it off. They can pull off a great season. And they have. And tonight so far has been the peak. And they may elevate that peak with a victory over Penn State next Thursday as well. That'll be a great game. We'll talk about that in a couple of days. But let's talk about what happened here in this Notre Dame, Georgia Sugar Bowl game in New Orleans. I also want to say that my thoughts and prayers are with everybody that was involved in the terrorist attack that took place in New Orleans. That was the worst news anybody could have woken up to on New Year's Day. And I hope that everyone who is involved and their families and friends are recovering comfortably and successfully from that. But going into the game here, Notre Dame won this thing with defense and special teams. Did they dominate Georgia? No. But they won the line of scrimmage. And they played better fundamental football than Georgia, which is something that I never thought I ever would say. But Georgia played Notre Dame, played better fundamental football than Georgia. That's how they won tonight. We got Zeke Wager in the chat here. Notre Dame has really helped Zeke cash in some bets throughout these past several years. If you know, you know. But defense and special teams won this game for Notre Dame. Those critical stops, Notre Dame took a lot of risks in this game, running blitzes on Gunnar Stockton. And, it's something that if you send a blitz and the offense capitalizes, they get an open man downfield. It could be an explosive play that happened a couple times for Georgia, with Cash Jones especially. But Notre Dame's blitz packages really helped them out today, and because that has to be when you're playing against a quarterback that's starting his first ever game in a playoff quarterfinal and the Sugar Bowl, high pressure moment. You've got to make him feel rattled. You've got to make him feel intimidated. That was the game plan for Notre Dame, and it worked out tremendously. They sent pressure all game, and they got him to feel rattled, got him to start questioning himself. And I will say Gunnar Stockton made some great throws tonight. He made some great throws. He was accurate for the situation that he walked into tonight. I thought that he managed the game pretty well, but Notre Dame's defensive strategy of bring pressure, being incredibly physical, and getting Gunnar Stockton, shutting down the run, just made the offense feel uncomfortable and disjointed. That's what won the game for them. And speaking of the run, we got Zeke talking shit about the SEC now. We'll save that for one of our calls or a future episode. We won't get into that today, but that'll be a discussion for the future. Georgia got held to 62 rushing yards. If you were to tell me 2 or 3 years ago that Notre Dame would hold Georgia to 62 rushing yards in a game, I'd laugh in your face. That's what happened today. And that was part of Notre Dame's strategy as well, because when you have a backup quarterback in, they're going to rely on the run a lot. And it's not because they don't want to demonstrate confidence in their quarterback just yet. You have to let him build his own confidence. And so you want to get that running game going and start to get some open windows for him, let him complete some short intermediate passes, build up that confidence, and then start to crank it out. Georgia was never able to get that running game going, and that led to a lot of discomfort on that team and a lack of ease. And that is really what led to Notre Dame starting to clamp their jaws onto Georgia in this game. We got Tyler Sellers asking me here, where does Georgia go at the QB spot next year? They run it back with Stockton. I think they're in a similar situation to Miami right now, where they saw what their next guy up looks like. You saw some good things, but some things that possibly need to be tweaked. Can they be tweaked in an off season? So if you're at staff, you got to have some real conversations about what the next steps are going to be, because you also never know, once these playoffs come to an end, there could be more quarterbacks in the portal. Do you act on that? If you get the right guy, do you make an offer? So I would say that Gunnar Stockton's spot isn't solidified yet, but I don't think that he has been bad enough to where Georgia has to start looking immediately for the next guy. He is salvageable. I think that there's some potential there, but you should also be looking at the portal to see what opportunities are available. That's my answer to that question. But that is how Notre Dame dominated this game, was special teams, defense, getting Georgia uncomfortable. And when you go into a game with a backup quarterback as well, your strategy, your playbook, you're really kind of limited. You're hobbling into this thing because you crafted all of your plays for Carson Beck. Now you've got a new guy in there, and you've got to build him up. So a lot of the plays that you had schemed up for Carson Beck, you can't run with Gunnar Stockton. And Notre Dame did a great job at attacking all of those weak points tonight. They knew how to make Georgia feel vulnerable, which again sounds crazy to me, those words even coming out of my mouth. But Notre Dame knew how to make Georgia feel vulnerable, and they capitalized. It wasn't sexy, it wasn't flashy, but it was great fundamental football. And as somebody who loves this game dearly, I respect the shit out of what I saw out of Notre Dame tonight. That is how you win playoff games. Amazing stuff. I also want to go into some of the intangibles that led to Notre Dame's victory tonight. Mental fortitude. This team's ability to push through, despite adversity and despite widespread doubt of your team, because as we all know, based on Notre Dame's history in these spots for the past 25, 30 years, in a position like they're in tonight, they have crumbled a lot. And I've seen it a lot in my lifetime. To Alabama and the Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl several years ago, to Clemson multiple times. That's what people started to view Notre Dame as, the team who will have a great regular season, but then fall apart when it means the most. And when you face a narrative like that, it's a real uphill battle, because you're proving your own philosophy right and you're proving people wrong at the same time. It can be exhausting. It can be a challenging battle that tests your mental fortitude. But Notre Dame had that mental fortitude this year. And, I mean, losing to Northern Illinois, that's the lowest of the low. That's embarrassing. You're being put on blast on social media all day, the day after. And people, players can say whatever they want. Everybody has phones. And you know what people are saying about you. And if you let yourself fall victim to what people are saying, determine what you think about yourself, it can lead to a down spiral of a season if you're Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois. They didn't let that happen. Instead, they used that as the low point that can help them propel to a greater version of themselves later in the season. It became brick by brick, week by week, win by win, a very process-oriented approach to winning these games that Notre Dame implemented this year. And it's been amazing to see. Was their schedule the most challenging this year? No. I had my questions about Notre Dame going into the playoff just because of what their experience was this year. Don't get me wrong. I didn't know how they'd match up with a Georgia or even Indiana when they played them. But time and time again, they've showed what they're made of. Their mental fortitude, their resilience, and confidence that they're the better team. You can see it with play calling. When you're calling as many blitzes as they were tonight, they were confident that their defensive line could outduel Georgia's offensive line. And you have to have that belief in yourself and in your team and in your system to call those plays. They did. That takes stones. Marcus Freeman has them. And building off of Marcus Freeman, ladies and gentlemen, newsflash. That's what good coaching looks like. If you're wondering what good coaching looks like, that is not only good. I'm sorry. I mixed my terminology there. That is what excellent coaching looks like. You can always tell a well-coached team. And I've seen it at Marcus Freeman these past several years. His mentality, his philosophy that he preaches to this team, they are very buttoned up. They're very process-oriented. They're very detail-oriented, very honed in on minimizing mental mistakes, because there will be some games, like think about the Ohio State game last year. You're not the most talented team on that field. No way. Notre Dame, in theory, could have won a national championship last year. Or Ohio State could have won a national championship last year. Forgive me. But they had the mental fortitude, and they were coached up well enough to where they came this close to beating the Buckeyes in that game. And that is a result of great coaching. When you can get guys to believe in a vision that's greater than themselves, and you can find a way to bring the best version out of every guy on that field, you're doing your damn job well. I mean, Riley Leonard, again, it wasn't the flashiest quarterback performance tonight. He didn't even throw for 100 yards. But he sacrificed his body and he willed Notre Dame to that victory tonight. He did what he needed to do to help the Irish secure a victory. Jeremiah Love, you're seeing the best get extracted out of him right now. He's flourishing. It's amazing to see. Jack Kaiser on defense. That guy flies around the field. Very entertaining to watch. His potential is being maximized. He, too, is becoming the best version of himself. That is what great coaching looks like. And not being afraid of the mighty Georgia Bulldogs. Because a lot of teams like Notre Dame, they get into the spot. And I know this isn't the best Georgia team you've seen the past several years. I'll get into that in a few minutes as well. But there's a lot of teams that'll go out there and they'll see the G on the helmet. They'll see the cherry uniforms. They'll see the big-ass defensive linemen. They'll see Kirby Smart leading the team out of the tunnel. And they'll say, oh, shit, we're playing these guys. And they'll roll over and get dominated. Notre Dame, that wasn't their attitude tonight. They said, yeah, We respect these guys as an opponent, but we're better than them, and we're going to win. We're going to run through this brick wall together. That was the mentality of Notre Dame tonight, and that's how they were able to secure this. Fantastic preparation, fantastic game plan, winning on special teams. The momentum shift was, number one, the strip sack that led to Notre Dame getting fantastic field position off of and late in the second quarter. And then the kick return touchdown to begin the third quarter. Special teams and defense. The fundamentals. Gritty football. That's how it's done. I love it. Game plan, defense, special teams, mental fortitude, philosophy, fantastic coaching. That's what you have. That your identity is tested in a playoff game like this. Notre Dame show what their identity is tonight. I got a few questions over here right now. How do you think LSU fans feel about Brian Kelly now? Let me take a swig of water before. Let me just think about what I'm going to say to that. You know what? They may have upgraded. They actually may have upgraded. This was the most prepared I've ever seen a Notre Dame team look in a bowl game in my lifetime. Not only did Notre Dame get dominated by Alabama and Arlington several years ago, or by Clemson in that playoff game several years ago, or in the national championship to Alabama, they looked unprepared. They didn't have the requisite talent to go head-to-head with the squad they're going up against. Don't get me wrong. But they were not prepared to go into those games. Notre Dame looked prepared. Their body language, their play calling, minimizing mental mistakes today. They knew what their vision was. They committed to it. They followed it. And they pulled it off because of that. You didn't see that out of Notre Dame when they had Brian Kelly. And I don't like to make those comparisons a lot because there's also different circumstances involved. I think the teams that Brian Kelly played are a lot better than the teams that Marcus Freeman is going up against. But the one thing that I can say is that these teams that Marcus Freeman are coaching, they look a lot more prepared. Let's talk about Georgia for a minute. What this win or what this loss means for that program. And where do they go from here? And so when you're a program like Georgia, the standard is the standard. The standard is extremely high. You compete for a national championship every year, like Alabama with Nick Saban, like Duke basketball, the North Carolina basketball, the Chiefs with Andy Reid, the Patriots with Bill Belichick. The standard is the standard. And when you have a considerable span of dominance, there's some years that you're going to have that are a down year. I grew up a Duke basketball fan, right? And there were some years where we had a fantastic team. I mean, by far, my favorite was 2015 with Okafor and Grayson Allen. And that team was fantastic. That won the Natty. And then you have the years like 2011 where you got Austin Rivers, and so I think you saw one of the Plumlee twins at the time. The team just didn't gel well enough, or the 2013 to 14 year when they had Jabari Parker and lost to Mercer. It just didn't gel well. But then you have the teams like 2010 that won the Natty, or the team with Jason Tatum that went really far. Sometimes you just have a better team that gels more. You can't maximize every year when you are a team that's sustainably successful. It's challenging to show up and show out every year. Georgia, I'll call it for what it was. The makeup of this team and their chemistry, it just wasn't as good as it's been in past years. The depth of talent wasn't as good as it's been in past years. You can't expect every team to be 2021 and 2022. You had Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Kaylee Ringo and Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers. It's borderline a super team. Even with Alabama, there were some years that Alabama had where, I mean, one year you got Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Najee Harris, and you're a powerhouse. Then other years you're a little more thin. Georgia was just a little more thin this year, and then especially you added in a quarterback injury to a team whose depth already wasn't really there, and a lot of the things that Georgia has been good at in past years, they weren't great at this year. Stopping the run, running the ball well. Their defense wasn't as dominant as it's been in past years. They just didn't look the same. They didn't have the same identity this year that they've had in past years. And that's going to happen. This is a powerhouse program. They still recruit extremely well. They're still a top 3 recruiting school right now in college football. I'm not worried about Georgia's trajectory. They have some questions to answer at the quarterback position. It is what it is. I think they may be fine with what they have, but I would explore. I wouldn't commit to what you have, but I would explore if you're Georgia. Some years, you just don't have your fastball. And yes, this Georgia team was not as good as Georgia teams we've seen in the past. And I'm not going to go through the whole theoretical thing here. Like, would Notre Dame have beaten the Georgia team in 22 or 21? No. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to subscribe to that. Notre Dame won the game today that they're presented with, and I credit them for that. I'm not going to play theoreticals. But as far as Georgia goes, I think that the trajectory is it's still positive. But I will say that there was also an inflection point in Nick Saban's coaching tenure at Alabama where he had to reinvent a few things. And this kind of builds off the question that Tyler Sellers just asked me. Is Georgia's offensive scheme outdated? I think they have to do some work to it. Absolutely. Great coaches know how to pivot. They know how to make adjustments when they have to. That's what made Nick Saban so great for so long. And I believe that Kirby Smart has that same DNA. There's sometimes in your tenure of winning and in dominance where you've got to adjust and adapt to remain competitive. Alabama was a very run-heavy, defensive-reliant team when they first started off their span of dominance with Nick Saban. And then they got beat at the top a couple times, by Ohio State, by Oklahoma, by Clemson. And they'd look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, we got to change a few things here. We've got to become faster on offense. We've got to become more pass heavy. We've got to we've got to expand the field here. We've got to be more aerial. And that's what Steve Sarkisian was able to do. I think that it's time for Georgia to start exploring that. Right? I mean, I think we're getting to a point where they have to start to reinvent and adapt on offense, become faster, become a little bit more pass heavy. That's what wins right now. And the running game was not as good as it's been in past years. I thought that their line looked a little wonky tonight. I thought the line looked wonky several times this year. And so I think just coaching that up better. I know they have the guys out there. I know that they have the bodies to get the job done on the offensive line. But I think especially tonight, they were shell-shocked by what they faced in Notre Dame. And I also don't know if they were expecting the degree to which Notre Dame was going to bring pressure and how imposing they were physically. I think they were a little shell-shocked by what they went up against tonight. And it's a wake-up call. I think that tonight's a wake-up call for Georgia. Was it a down year? Yes. But it's a year that also illustrates where you are. You're in a good position. You made the playoff. You won the SEC. You're in the quarterfinal. The sky's not falling in. But in order to remain the same dominant Georgia, got to make some tweaks. Got to adapt a little bit. I think it's a real look at yourself in the mirror game. Where are we right now? Where are we heading? What course correction can we make to make sure that we remain the dominant Georgia program that we are in a landscape right now where you see Tennessee getting better and Oregon getting better and Penn State getting better and South Carolina getting better and Ole Miss getting better? What can we do to remain competitive, remain relevant, and remain the same competitive Georgia? Getting beat on the line like they did tonight, it's not ideal. Getting the run shut down like they did tonight, not ideal. Penalties, Georgia was fine with. They were still disciplined from that standpoint. But there were several fundamental things that were off. I mean, coughing the ball up right before the half. Not something you would have seen in the past. Allowing explosive play to start the third quarter. Not something we would have seen in the past out of Georgia. Sideline antics. Having an explosive play downfield get taken away because you had somebody touch a ref. No, that's not something that you see out of Georgia. And Kirby flipped his shit when that happened. Don't get me wrong. But you wouldn't see that out of them in the past. So I think you got to reel it in, evaluate this year for what it was. It was a successful season for Georgia. Don't get me wrong. Not to their standard, but you're still in the realm of relevance. But start to discuss what adjustments and adaptations have to be made down the line here to remain dominant. But this was an excellent win. This was a program-defining win for the Fighting Irish tonight. They finally got that big win that so many people questioned if they'd ever be able to achieve or not, attain or not. They did. They finally made it over the hill. This is the best Notre Dame team that I've seen in years. I've seen more talented Notre Dame teams than this, but this team has grit. They have heart. They have mental fortitude. They have focus. And they have determination, and they have attention to detail. They do the little things well, and damn it, they believe in each other. And that's what you need more than anything at this time when you got 4 teams left. What teams believe in the guys around them more? You're in the trenches with each other. You're in battle with each other. Who believes in the guys around them more? Notre Dame's got belief, and that's another thing that Marcus Freeman has allowed that team to instill in itself. We got a comment over here. Great game, Georgia, from Craig Boson. Great game, Georgia. Your fans are class acts every time we play. They played a home-and-home series back in 2019, 2020, Notre Dame and Georgia. And this is a Notre Dame fan here. I take it Craig is, and you're saying that they're classy fans. As an Alabama alum, I went back to Tuscaloosa back in September to watch the Dogs play my Tide. Their fans are great to be around. They were class act fans when I was there as well. They're great people to be around, and I always welcome them with open arms. Tuscaloosa, we're always welcome in Athens, and when we would combine for annual SEC Championship Festival in Atlanta, they're always very hospitable as well. So excellent fan base, Georgia. Great people, and I think that to their pleasure, they will continue to have a dominant team down the stretch here. I think that they'll make the course corrections necessary to remain the same dominant Georgia that they've been. But this was huge. What happened tonight was huge for the Irish. And I also, one thing to end off on, I loved the way that Notre Dame players reacted to this game. They soaked it in. They saw the confetti falling. But they knew that wasn't it. They said, we're going to hop on a plane, and we're going to get ready for Penn State. And we're going to do this thing again next Thursday. That's the mentality that you have to have to win at this time of year. Nick Saban say the 24-hour rule. You soak it in, and then you pivot on. You transition on to what's next. And Notre Dame embodies that mentality, and I love it. Kudos to the Fighting Irish. That was a great win. It was a fun game to watch. And I think their game with Penn State's going to be a classic. I can't wait for it. And they got Texas and Ohio State next week as well. I'll be planning to go live from the Cotton Bowl or from AT&T Stadium next Wednesday. Right now, I'm putting plans together for that to go live leading up to the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl next week. So looking forward to seeing y'all tune in for that. But I want to thank everyone who jumped on this live stream tonight and for all the interactions that we had. Tyler Sellers, Craig Boson, Zeke Wager, everybody interacted with me tonight. I appreciate your support as always. I want you all to know that. Thank you for a successful video in the Alabama-Michigan video that I made several days ago. It's around 1,000 views right now. I can't thank you enough for that. We've already gained a significant amount of subscribers this year. And so it is only up from here for the Era brand. And we're all growing together, baby. We're all growing together. Let's continue to build this thing brick by brick. And I can't wait for some more amazing playoff football down the stretch. Notre Dame, soak it in. Georgia, you're going to be just fine. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day.